Way back in October of 2022, Shonen Jump released one of the best manga they ever had. It was titled Ruri Dragon, and its concept is quite simple. You see this woman, yes, this one right here. She did the nasty, the hanky-panky, shkadoodled, pwned, and I'm running out of euphemisms for it, so I'm just gonna say it. She fucked Dragon. God, I wish that were me. And presumably 9 months and an egg later, this girl popped out. Ruri Aoki, and she was a normal girl until one day the other side of her genetics began to manifest. And yet, despite being part dragon, she still has to go to school and live a normal life, fire breathing and all. And bada bing, bada boom, that's pretty much the entire manga. And you know what? It works. It fucking works. So all you gotta do is sit back and relax and let your old pal Fury walk you through every writing trick and technique used to make this manga so good. This is what makes Ruri Dragon work. Let me walk you through the chapters really quickly. Chapter 1 serves as our introduction to Ruri and our daily life with newfound horns. We also get a general understanding of the reoccurring characters, Yuka being her best friend, her mother, her laid-back sensei, and Ruri herself. All in all, things could be worse. Everything's pretty normal until... And thus begins Chapter 2, the learning how not to kill people by sneezing arc. We learn that Ruri's mother went to go visit her dad to ask what's up and that he isn't helpful. But Ruri does get a hold of her fire breath and even runs into her friend Yuka at the store, who can't wait for her to come back to school. A problem that's the main focus of Chapter 3, getting Ruri off her butt and going back to school. She's a bit anxious about it on the case of the whole spitting fire and nearly killing someone, but all's well that ends well with a really nice speech from her sensei. Chapter 4 deals with the fact that Ruri missed a week of school, but her classmate Kashiro breaks through her rough exterior, even inviting her out to a study session at Starbucks. Chapter 5 is slower than all of the rest, mostly dealing with Ruri's reactions to the new developments in her life. It's a small chapter meant to give us some breathing room for Chapter 6. It's more of the same, Ruri hanging out with Yuka and her new friend Kashiro until she discovers a new power, electrostatic discharge. And as for Chapter 7, there is no Chapter 7. The series has been on hiatus for quite some time due to the author's poor health. And yet, despite there only being 6 chapters, there's a lot of good technique for me to dig into. Let's start with how this manga manages to subvert your expectations in a good way. Did you notice in my summary how Ruri learning to manage her dragon powers only lasted for 2 chapters? Really, it's even less than that because Ruri unlocks her fire breath at the end of Chapter 1 and has it managed by the end of Chapter 2. But the manga is titled Ruri Dragon. What kind of manga ends their main conflict 2 chapters in? How does it go on for 4 more? That's because, despite the title being Ruri Dragon, being part dragon isn't actually the main source of conflict. It's the inciting incident, the event that gets the story started and the protagonist out of their usual humdrum daily life. In Bleach, Fishbone D is the inciting incident. In Dragon Ball, it's Goku meeting Bulma. The inciting incident can be the main source of conflict itself, but it's often the initial push that gets the ball rolling. And it is that key part that separates it from the conflict. The actual conflict in Ruri Dragon is not the dragon, but Ruri herself. Over the course of the manga, while not explicitly stated, it's clear that Ruri has some sort of anxiety or antisocial issue that prevents her from making friends. Look at the faces she makes, the things she says. In Chapter 1, after those horns get her others' attention, listen to her in her dialogue. Every single one of her thoughts, while not outwardly rude, are passive-aggressive. And if that's not enough to sell you on how much Ruri dislikes other people, her only friend Yuka says this: "It could be good for you to talk to more people, Ruri, even if it's not your favorite thing in the world." And if Ruri's anxiety issues are still too subtle for you, Chapter 4 straight up has her unable to enter a Starbucks. The reading comprehension devil may work hard, but our mangaka works harder. Hammering details into your audience's head can be very annoying because readers don't like being reminded how stupid they are. Readers don't like being made to feel stupid. And that's why Ruri Dragon skillfully dances around the point. They never outright say the problem. At no point in the story do they say that Ruri is antisocial. We're left to understand her thoughts for ourselves and to rationalize it in our own minds. Rather than just handing us the answer, the author drops clues at our feet and leaves it up to us to figure it out. Yes, the puzzle may be obvious and they may hand us piece after piece, but nonetheless, it ensures that the audience gets the information without feeling hampered. It's a process you've probably heard of called show, don't tell. Like the name implies, it's the technique of the author showing us a detail rather than just telling us. It's the difference between being told that Sukuna is strong and then seeing him ride Jogo through a building like a fucking meat toboggan. One is a line of dialogue, and the other is an event that the audience can remember, having a much bigger impact. However, show don't tell isn't a perfect solution and ironically can backfire. If you keep showing the audience the same thing over and over again to ensure they get it, they might get bored or annoyed with the endless repetition and just stop reading. It might be more effective to save time and just tell the audience, that way the space can be taken up with something more engaging. So how does Ruri Dragon get around that? How do they hammer home Ruri's personality without getting too repetitive? The answer itself is simple. We just break up the flow by showing Ruri not being grumpy, but how do we do that? More so, we need to show off this side of her without breaking immersion. Because it makes perfect sense for this socially awkward person to be more awkward and anxious than usual when they suddenly grow horns. And that's where two characters come in, Yuka and her mother. Oh, wait, hang on before I forget. I'm not actually sure what I'll cover next, so leave whatever manga or anime you'd like to see in the comments, or donate to my Ko-fi and Patreon to yell at me directly. Now, back to what I was saying about Yuka and Ruri's mom. They both have the same function within the story, essentially acting as Ruri's better half. They provide people Ruri is actually friendly with and comfortable being around. Pairing them together, you can show Ruri actually enjoying someone else's company. Ruri gets to be her cranky self, and yet their presence gives her an excuse to show off her better qualities despite her circumstances. Seeing the way Ruri acts to others as opposed to Yuka and her mother not only keeps Ruri's personality from wearing on the reader, but also gives insight into Ruri's character. That's because it's an exercise in contrast. In writing terms, contrast is the technique of highlighting differences or similarities by directly opposing two things. Look in Chapter 5 after Ruri learns that her mother spoke to her class on her behalf. Ruri may look or act ungrateful, but her thoughts reveal another thing. Next time you read Ruri Dragon, take note not of how often Ruri smiles, but how often she blushes in subtle acknowledgement and gratitude. The best example of contrast, in my opinion, is actually in Chapter 1 and doesn't have to do with Yuka or her mother. It's when Ruri takes a selfie with some classmates. Despite this being the face she makes as it's taken, this is the face she makes when she gets the photo. And Ruri Dragon employs contrast so well. Because not only does it employ more show don't tell, showing the audience that the way Ruri acts is different from her real feelings rather than telling us, not only does it break up Ruri's anxious personality, making it so that it doesn't wear on the reader, but using contrast highlights both of these key points, making Ruri's better side more noticeable to the reader. It's the use of two different techniques to enhance each other and increase enjoyment of the story. However, before this video ends, I'd like to take things in a slightly different direction. I couldn't find a good way to put this into the script, so I'm just tacking it on to the end. Let's talk about the themes of Ruri Dragon. I think my favorite example that makes the theme most clearly known isn't actually found in the manga. Because Ruri Dragon started off as a one-shot. 2 years before it premiered in Shonen Jump, it started out in Jump Giga. The one-shot follows a lot of the same structure as the actual series, with Ruri growing horns and breathing fire. But things take a wild change in the second half, where Ruri's mom asks if she wants to meet her father. One short hike up the mountain later, and there he is. and there's one thing Ruri wants to ask. How did you create me? And her dad simply says, ask your mom. The underpinning of this joke is also the underpinning of the entire series. Despite her father being a dragon, Ruri was created like any other girl. She may be weird, she may be different, she may be anxious and struggle with actually saying what she means, but she's just like any other girl. And that's why the actual conflict of the series isn't what makes Ruri different, i.e. being a dragon. Rather, it's what makes her like a ton of other people. It's not what makes her different that's the problem. It's what makes her like everyone else. It makes her relatable, and all those words of encouragement from those around Ruri can now be applied to the reader, not just her. If we're talking about an example that makes the theme clear in the actual manga rather than the one-shot, then it's this quote from her sensei right here. After all, you're far from a first case of someone in society who's different from the average person. Breathing a little fire is nothing to make a fuss about. The world's full of all sorts. And though some take issue with those who are different, I say how about we all just get along. The central idea behind Ruri Dragon is very similar to Mob Psycho 100. Rather than being about what makes us different, it's the author bringing us back down to earth and reminding Ruri and the reader that you're just like everyone else. It's a theme that works quite well for stories where people are born different, since it can work as an allegory for many things, such as being gay or a variety of other minorities. But getting into that is a video for another day. Since I don't have anything else to say, it's time for Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to 87 Werehog, Deku, Zora Chow, Choran, Garen LaFay, Darren King Yara, Anon RC, Lightning Shadow, and Kayun. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon and Miko, the Bears of the Mountain. And for our Super D-Tuber special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower at the Nth Banquet. Then Poor Mage, Grappling with Destiny. Followed by Hodari Lion in the Fires of Daybreak. Next, Sky King 64, Surfing the Wave. And finally, Mahagasaur, the Spirit of Zen. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, this is your host Fury signing out.